Thank you very much, Undersecretary Gascon. I'm sure a lot of you have been provoked to raise questions later on. No? Next up, we will ask Professor Tadem of the UP Asian Center to give a reaction and reflection paper.
Salamat, Malu. Just as a disclosure, the claim ako in my middle name refers to my mother, the current mayor of Zamboanga City is my first cousin, but that not in any way influences my views and opinions on the Zamboanga Crisis or on Mindanao as a whole. The point here actually is that what is going on in Zamboanga is not just about Zamboanga. Zamboanga is not a sacred or hallowed city, even though it calls itself the Latin city of Asia. It's not about Zamboanga City, it's really about the whole of Mindanao and Sulu. And one really has to take a longer view, a longer historical view, in order to understand why what took place in Zamboanga is of such epic proportions. So my presentation here is to look at the historical and political economy context of the Mindanao situation, which ultimately will explain why the Zamboanga crisis took place. It is widely believed that economic growth and development have bypassed the southern regions of the Philippines. This is seen as the cause of the serious political problems that now plague Mindanao. A closer look at Mindanao's economic development, however, reveals that far from being isolated from the mainstream of the national economy, the island has actually been a major performer and a primary contributor to the country's productive capacities. Lured by vast reserves of natural resources, business concerns have invested capital and technology and established ventures that have generated enormous profits for their owners and executives. But the resulting wealth and incomes have not benefited the greater majority of its people. Poverty and other social indicators point to a more distressed condition for Mindanao residents than for the nation as a whole. Now, this paradox of high growth rates and the simultaneous existence of an impoverished population have challenged scholars and development planners for many years. In the Mindanao case, this enigma is exacerbated by the effects of what scholars call internal colonialism, the transfer of wealth from the southern regions to the nucleus of economic and political power in the north, otherwise known as Imperial Manila. Mindanao's contribution to the national economy has been quite immense. Mindanao, its forest area, comprises 41% of the country's vegetative cover and 56% of Philippine commercial land. Mindanao produces 73% of the value added in the forestry sector. 56% of total Philippine commercial forest land is in Mindanao. Over 90% of the country's total production of wood products come from Mindanao. The island also produces 43% of the Philippines' agricultural output and supplies 40% of the country's food requirements and 30% of the national food trade. The waters around Mindanao and Sulu contribute 32% of the country's total fishery products and more than half of the country's total commercial fish catch. More than 60% of Philippine coconut exports come from Mindanao, which also hosts most of the country's coconut oil mills. Agriculture, fishery, and forestry production in Mindanao combine for 36% of the total value added in the country. Mindanao also accounts for 100% of rubber production, 75% of coffee, and 1/3 of livestock products. In the mineral sector, Mindanao's share of the national total is about 1/4, 25%. The world's largest nickel reserves are in northeastern southern Mindanao. Gold and copper are extensively mined in the Agusan and Davao provinces. Mindanao accounts for 1/4 of the country's total exports. In 2012, 60% of the country's agricultural exports originated in Mindanao, including 90% of the export fruits. Investments have also been quite considerable in Mindanao. In 2012, registered investments in Mindanao totaled 19.35 billion pesos. And local investments are in mining, fishing, power generation, fruit growing, rubber manufacturing, banana growing, coconut products, and so forth and so on. Foreign investments are also present in Mindanao, and they are in power generation, marine and petroleum products, Cavendish bananas, coconut processing, and so forth and so on. As far as infrastructure development goes, Mindanao also has not been abandoned. Trillions of pesos have been poured into Mindanao by the Manila government, comprising of bridges, power plants, ports, airports, road networks, and integrated development projects. The biggest of these was the Cotabato-Agusan River Basin Development Project, which covered 11 provinces, or 1/3 of Mindanao's land area. For 2013 and 2014 alone, the DPWH has allocated 382 billion pesos for Mindanao's infrastructure projects. Official development assistance or foreign aid has also been pouring into Mindanao, especially since the September 11, 2000 attacks in New York. The USAID granted $190 million in grants to the Mindanao Peace and Development Program, and the World Bank initiated a multi-donor trust fund totaling $400 million for the rehabilitation needs of MILF combatants and communities and indigenous communities. But all this is part of a development strategy which has long been pursued in Mindanao, which is essentially driven by the Philippine state's objective of integrating the southern economy into the national mainstream. The aim is to open up more of Mindanao's natural resources to exploitation and extraction, with the private sector as the prime mover. Little attention, however, is paid to the actual needs of Mindanao's peoples, such as directly addressing poverty and inequality, which are the principal causes of social unrest and rebellion. During Ferdinand Marcos's authoritarian rule, such strategies were formulated in the midst of increasing social tensions, depletion of the land frontier, land concentration and agrarian conflicts, and the marginalization and impoverishment, especially of the Moro and the Lumad peoples. Post-Marcos development strategies did not differ essentially from the previous regime. Whether this was Corazon Aquino's regional industrial centers, Fidel Ramos's Mindanao Investment Development Authority, and the Big Iaga strategy, or Gloria Macapagal Arroyo's Mindanao National Initiatives, the basic premises, principles, and thrusts have remained unchanged. As far as I know, this is still the same strategy being pursued under the present administration of Benigno Aquino III. Echoing the Manila government's initiative, the newly created Mindanao Development Authority, or MINDA, focuses on agribusiness as a major area for economic development in Mindanao. But it is doubtful, however, whether Mindanao's hope lies in agribusiness, which at the moment already occupies a central place in the island's economy. Agribusiness activities have caused more problems than solutions for Mindanao's peoples through environmental degradation, human rights violations, corruption, health problems, and massive wealth transfers from Mindanao. Despite the decades-long economic growth thrusts in Mindanao, and apart from the economic disparities engendered by the unequal economic relations between Mindanao and the rest of the country, basic human development indicators reveal that all of this economic growth has not benefited Mindanao's peoples. Using the Human Development Index developed by the UNDP, Mindanao provinces fared badly compared to other Philippine provinces. In the HDI report released in July 2013, 9 of the 10 provinces at the bottom of the list are in Mindanao, Lanao del Sur, Zamboanga del Norte, Sarangani, Davao Oriental, Agusan del Sur, Zamboanga, Tawi-Tawi, Maguindanao, and Sulu. The HDI, or the Human Development Index, of the top provinces in the Philippines, and all of them are in Luzon, is twice that of the bottom 10 provinces. When adjusted for inequality, 9 of the 10 biggest losers were all Mindanao provinces. Mindanao's 2011 per capita income of 37,140 pesos is 41% lower than the national figure of 62,902 and 79% lower than the national capital region's 175,064. Poverty incidence in Mindanao is consistent with the island's low standing in the National Human Development Index. Its average poverty incidence of 43.51% in 2012 was 44% higher than the national average of 27.9%. There is no doubt that large amounts of wealth have been created from Mindanao's abundant resources. Where all this wealth goes can be traced to the uneven development of the country's regions and the relations of dependency engendered by this particular type of development. In other words, the Mindanao regions are being drained of incomes and wealth by the more developed northern regions in Luzon and even in the Visayas. Internal colonialism theory describes and analyzes the distribution of power and advantage within states, between a center and a periphery, where economic resources and power are concentrated in the center to the advantage of which the periphery is subordinated. And this situation is clearly evident in the Mindanao case. The data show how large volumes of coconut products from Mindanao farms are shipped to Manila and Cebu, and fish products caught in Mindanao are unloaded in Manila and Iloilo ports. Corporations operating in Mindanao usually have their main offices in Metro Manila, where they pay their taxes, thus depriving local governments of revenue. Internal colonialism would explain why, despite the presence of massive government projects and highly profitable industries, the Mindanao regions remain poor and deprived. Mindanao, therefore, has been the object of relentless economic exploitation since the turn of the 20th century. This process has produced immeasurable wealth and riches for a few mostly non-Mindanaoan firms and individuals. But it has also generated poverty and social marginalization for its working population, whether Moro, Lumad, or working-class Christian settlers. Furthermore, its natural resources are being depleted at an uncontrollable pace, stoking fears of an ecological backlash. In the meantime, Imperial Manila is bent on accelerating the same old patterns of inequitable growth that have long deprived Mindanaoans of their just share of the economic surplus. The country's leaders must initiate a process of constructing a new development paradigm for Mindanao that will finally render social and economic justice for Mindanao's peoples. The grim alternative will be the continuation of the cycle of violence and warfare that have long characterized southern Philippines. Thank you.